I think anyone can say we're number one or we're the best. And we don't try to be the best. We try to be the most engaging. We want to win the minds and hearts of our audience. And I think we've done a pretty good job so far. And so there's a lot of different ways we do that. You can look at it simply as any of the organic channel growth, right? Are we getting more LinkedIn followers? Are we getting more email subscribers? Are we getting more people on the blog and the website traffic and all those things? And that's been going up and to the right, thankfully for the last few years. The other thing we look at very specifically is engagement rate on LinkedIn. We have about 4.5% engagement rate across all of our LinkedIn content for the Gong page. We don't track across all the employees. And so, so that's something we take really seriously, right? As we have scaled our programs over the last couple years, especially the content output on email channels and LinkedIn, we don't want to just go, double content production for the sake of doubling content and then see our engagement rate drop, right? So we focus on that every 2 weeks. We have a meeting, we go over the top engaging posts, least engaging posts, what can we learn, what can we change? And then we look at that engagement number to make sure that's staying where it should be. Of course, it fluctuates a little bit from week to week. And that's a little bit of a better indicator than just followers. Followers is a little bit more of a lagging indicator. When I talk to other marketers, whether that's, and especially content, but marketers in general, and could be a leader of content or, an IC, the number one thing that I sense or hear directly is that they're overwhelmed. I haven't heard anyone say that they've got more. I've got Friday afternoon open. I'll take on a new project, right? It's like everyone's strapped for time, myself included. And so my advice is, stop doing so much. And here's really what I mean. Because there's so many things you can do in marketing, we oftentimes as marketing think that we should be doing all of those things, right? I could have a blog. I could have a podcast. I just heard Devin talk about a research blog. Maybe I should launch one of those. Maybe I should do Twitter. Devin's on LinkedIn, and there's just so much input that I think sometimes it's external, indirect, right? Like you could hear this podcast and think maybe I need to do something new, which hopefully is that if the case, if it makes sense for you. Or it could be your CEO or CMO, saying we need to have this, we need to have it tomorrow. And so I think what happens is, you've heard the expression, you get spread really thin. And instead of being great at one thing, you're okay or mediocre at 5 to 10 things. And that has a lot of really bad repercussions, right? The results usually aren't there. A big one is sales. You can lose the sales buy-in. You're like, we got a podcast, but it's not that good. Like I wouldn't recommend it. Like that's really bad if your employee base isn't really excited about your content. And so my advice is, and I followed this when I got into content, was I picked 1 or 2 things and I went really, really deep and I put all of my energy into it. And I was really confident that if these worked, it would open up new doors to new channels and new things, right? So ours was this research blog and LinkedIn. That was it. And they were tied because I would distribute the content through LinkedIn. Yeah. We just did that over and over and over for a good year. Then, we started adding video to LinkedIn, right? So it's like, okay, bulking up LinkedIn a little bit more. We're still not on Twitter. I mean, we are very lightly, but barely, basically not on Twitter. We're not really on Facebook organically. We're not really on YouTube except for putting our podcast there. Like we don't have a YouTube show. And we'll get there eventually, right? Like you can still be strategic and effective in a couple channels and build an entire content engine around that's really successful and fun to build, than thinking that you have to have a weekly webinar series. If I had no bounds, what would you create? I looked at no bounds, and I wouldn't just build one piece of content. I would actually build a true internal media company. And I know that's kind of a phrase that's been thrown around, like don't build a marketing team, build a media company. And I'm okay with the advice at a high level. Executing it is very challenging. It's nearly impossible. So if I really had no bounds and unlimited money, I would actually build a sub team that is just a media company purely focused on winning attention.